It's time for America Outdoors Radio, the show that covers the outdoor scene across the U.S. of A. and the entire continent. Fishing, hunting, conservation, outdoor recreation, and great destinations, we cover it all every week. It's your country, your outdoors. Let's explore it together with your host, John Cruz.
Oh crap, I caught a carp. Have you heard your fishing buddies say that before after hooking what he or she thought was a nice bass, walleye, or catfish? I know I have, and I don't think it's a coincidence that the words crap and carp contain the exact same letters, albeit in different order. They are considered trash fish by many. Carp are often thrown onto the bank after being caught, and here in the U.S., they're almost never eaten. Plus, if you get too many of these carp in a pond or lake, they can muck up that water in a hurry and damage healthy populations of other fish by causing algae blooms and decreasing water clarity. On the other hand, carp are a well-respected fish to catch and eat in Europe, and many anglers you see fishing in big cities there are targeting these fish. There's also an organization trying to restore carp dignity here in the United States. It's called the American Carp Society. It was founded by carp anglers in 2002, and they exist, in their words, for the betterment of carp. I don't see myself joining the American Carp Society anytime soon, but I do have a confession to make. I kind of like catching carp from time to time. One of my earliest fishing memories is of my granddad taking me fishing in north central Colorado to a place called Seeley Lake. He would thread corn onto a hook, toss it out with a weight, and in no time at all, I was a small kid battling a big fish. It was way more fun than catching 5-inch sunfish and pumpkin seed out of the local pond. And I'll also admit that even now, especially during the winter, when there's very little opportunity for open water fishing, I'll head to some of the wasteways that flow year-round in eastern Washington state and toss a night crawler out into the slow-moving water, hoping for a big old scaly carp to bite. Let's face it, they do tug on that pole. They fight well. And if you hook into a big one that's 8, 12, or even 20 pounds, you are in for one heck of a battle. I used to look around as I hauled these fish in, making sure nobody was seeing me, a supposedly respected angler, angling for trash fish, but I've come to accept as an older angler that one man's trash is another man's treasure, and sometimes catching and releasing trash fish like carp when there's nothing else to do can make for a really fun day on the water. So, carp diem, or seize the day as they say in Latin, and if all else fails in your fishing world, remember, there's always carp. This week on the show, salmon seasons have been set in the northwestern U.S., British Columbia, and Alaska, and because of low returns of Chinook salmon, there's going to be some serious restrictions for anglers in the saltwater this year, and on key rivers like the Columbia, bordering Washington and Oregon, that's going to make it difficult for many to come home with even one fish, let alone a cooler. Fortunately, there is a place you can go to fill that cooler full of fish, and that would be in Southeast Alaska. And while you can only keep one Chinook salmon if you're a non-resident this year, there are plenty of other salmon to catch there this summer, as well as halibut, lingcod, true cod, and rockfish, which are all quite tasty. I'm heading up there with my daughter in a couple of months, and we'll be heading back to Sportsman's Cove Lodge on Prince of Wales Island near Ketchikan. It turns out there's some exciting new opportunities waiting for us there, and maybe for you too this summer, and Captain McQuarrie, the owner of this wonderful place, will join us to tell you more about them. Something else we'll discuss is fly fishing, but not the fly fishing you think. Nope, no spey rods and long casts into swift-flowing rivers this week. Instead, we're going to be talking about trolling flies for success in lakes and bays around the country for a variety of different species. The person who's going to tell you about this is Denis Peirce, the owner of Arctic Fox Trolling Flies and a longtime outdoors radio show host broadcasting out of Grass Valley, California. We've got some outdoors news for you, too. And on the hunting and conservation side of the show, we'll get a chance to chat with Phil Bourjaily, the shotgun editor for Field & Stream magazine, about ruffed grouse. It's a bird species that just about everyone with a shotgun has hunted at one time or another. And if you're like me, you often take them for granted. But it turns out we shouldn't, because their numbers are dropping at an alarming rate in many states around the nation. Phil's going to join us to explain why this is happening and what can be done to get grouse numbers up again in our woods. Before we talk grouse, though, let's tie on a fly and let out some line and see what happens, because our first guest today is the owner of trollingflies.com. His name is Denis Peirce. He's the longtime host of the KNCO Fishing and Outdoor Report, heard every week on KNCO News Talk 830 out of Grass Valley, California. And he's got a whole different way of fishing flies that you're probably not used to. Denis, welcome aboard.
Well, John, thank you for having me. I'm flattered that you'd have me on your show.
Well, I am thrilled to have you on this show, and I'm really interested in this topic, trolling flies. I mean, most folks, let's face it, when they think fly fishing, they think of Brad Pitt on that poster of a river runs through it, casting flies in a Montana stream, or streams anywhere from Pennsylvania and New York all the way to the Sierra Mountains. What about trolling flies? How is this an effective method?
My attitude on it is that in lakes, you've got more and bigger trout than you're going to find in a river system. And trolling with flies, you get a movement to the bait, if you wanted to call it that, or the lure, that you can't get with other things. But movement equals life. And if you get a fly that moves well, they see it. And basically what we're talking about are minnow imitations, to a certain extent, leeches and maybe damsel nymphs, but it's minnow-eating fish that we're targeting.
So you're going to have to help me out. When I think of trolling in lakes, especially for trout and kokanee, I'm always thinking of, well, I'm going to have some dodger or flasher, and behind that I'm going to tie a lure like a wedding ring spinner or maybe a hoochie skirt if I'm after kokanee. And then, of course, if it's kokanee, you got to peg it with shoe peg corn. But when it comes to a fly, that's not the way it works, is it?
Well, yes and no. My introduction to trolling flies goes back to the 1990s when I met a fellow by the name of Jay Fair, who was the trolling fly guru of Northeast California. And he developed a way of manipulating the rod tip to make the fly dance in the water. The problem with that is you had to get the technique right, but it's super effective if you did. And then around 2001, a fellow out of Boise, Idaho, named Dean Teagarden came up with the wiggle fin action disc that actually turns a fly into a crankbait. So if you're not manipulating the fly near the surface, you can put it on a downrigger, send it 100 feet down, and still get a really interesting swimming action out of it.
Well, I want to break this down a little bit further. Let's start off with the rod manipulation. Is this something you're manually doing as you're trolling along, whether it be your float tube or pontoon boat or even your 12-footer with an electric motor?
Yes. Now, the way the system turned out to work is he actually used a floating fly line with a sinking tip. And he was picking up the line and mending it, just flipping it off to the side a foot, which made the fly surge forward, and it didn't quite pause, but it slowed down. And so the manipulation of the rod tip made the fly dance in the water, and he was doing that continuously. If someone's interested in the technique, and it really is effective, on my website, on the Jay Fair trolling flies, there's a link to a video there that shows Jay actually doing the technique with underwater video and that kind of stuff. But the wiggle fin action disc, when I saw that, when it was invented at the turn of the millennium, that I went, no, now anybody can go out and troll with a fly and be effective with it and catch fish. It's the real impetus for me to come up with the Arctic Fox trolling flies.
This action disc, how far ahead of your fly are you putting this?
You can use it and the distance above the fly to tune the way the fly swims. So right on the nose of it, it works well, but the turbulence coming off of it lifts the materials out and gives you a bigger profile if it's right on the nose of the fly. If you move it up the line as much as a foot, the turbulence dissipates and you get more of a tight vibration in a skinnier profile, more like a smelt or a anchovy profile out of it. So there is no right answer. There's just different answers that work on different days.
This is absolutely fascinating to me, and it's so much different than a traditional fly angler's method of casting like we talked about at the beginning, or even fishing under a strike indicator, which for all practical purposes is almost like fishing under a bobber. So trolling flies here, when it comes to your flies, that you make, Arctic trolling flies, are they all basically some streamers with some of them with flashaboo to give off a little flash?
That's where I started. In 1999, I met a man who was promoting fox fur as a fly tying material, and when I saw that stuff, it's got the movement of marabou, but it's white so that you can dye it hot colors. But fur has tensile strength. It's about protecting the animal, whereas marabou, which is the traditional fly streamer material, is about flight. It's a feather. It's about flight. It's dainty, and it's not tough. But the Arctic fox fur, and once I saw that and the wiggle fin action disc sort of came together in one place, and I went Arctic fox trolling flies, and I started getting into more of the exact imitation school of thought when it comes to fly design.
Well, we are going to have to leave it at that, but I want you to stick around because I want you back towards the end of our program to talk about some of the places where you've used your trolling flies and what you've caught with them. In the meantime, folks, check out Denis Peirce's website. It's trollingflies.com. That's trollingflies.com. Dennis, looking forward to talking to you in a few more minutes.
Thanks, John.
Why book at Sportsman's Cove Lodge?
Why is Alaska like no other place on Earth? It hasn't changed in thousands of years.
From the way you get here on a float plane to the way you go out with the guides and the boats, it's just a professional experience.
And I said, this is as good as it gets. I said, if you can't catch fish here, you can't catch fish anywhere.
Your experience with us will leave you speechless.
Book now at alaskasbestlodge.com. You're back in with America Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz, and it's time to talk about the ruffed grouse. It's that common game bird of the woods, enjoyed by lots of bird hunters every fall, and also enjoyed by a whole lot of deer hunters when big game hunting tends to get slow. I'll tell you what, they're taken for granted by many hunters as the bird that's always available, but the fact of the matter is, ruffed grouse populations in key parts of our nation, they're in trouble. With us here to tell you more about this is the man who wrote about this subject in an article called Tough Times. You'll find in the latest edition of Field & Stream magazine. That person, Shotgun's editor, Phil Bourjaily. Phil, great to have you on the air.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, Phil, I read this article, and I was quite frankly surprised to hear this news. I live out in the Pacific Northwest, where ruffed grouse populations seem to be pretty stable, but I understand now that's not the case in other parts of the country, is it?
It's not, and I was surprised too. The genesis of this story was I went up to Grand Rapids, Minnesota 2 years ago to hunt in the Ruffed Grouse Society's National Hunt, which is sort of a research hunt that they have every year, research and fundraising hunt in the same area, and I'd hunted in it 10 years before, and it was phenomenal. And I went back. It was the same part of the ruffed grouse population cycle where it was rising, and there were no birds. We hunted very hard and shot a couple, saw very few, and it was a surprise to me. And then, on top of that, I learned that Indiana recently listed the grouse as state endangered, and there are 18 states, mostly throughout the Midwest into the Appalachians, that list the grouse as a species of greatest conservation need.
So here's the question. Why are numbers falling off in these states?
The simple answer is forest maturation. Ruffed grouse are birds of young forest, and there's very little for grouse. They depend on, in a mature forest, they depend on thick young stands of trees, both for food and also as overhead protection from predators. Hawks can't get at them if they are in a little thick stand of skinny trees, and those two factors are really are very important to ruffed grouse survival, and they don't find it in big woods.
That's really interesting because, you think of grouse habitat. When you first think of grouse habitat, you think of stands of aspens, you think of stands of pine, and you tend to think in your mind's eye of those mature forests and the clean ground below that you're walking on. But I guess you're absolutely right. It's that secondary growth that makes all the difference. Now, before we get more into habitat, let me ask you a question. I had heard that West Nile virus was a real issue, especially in Pennsylvania. Is this true?
It is true. Pennsylvania has seen outbreaks of West Nile in the past several years, and in Minnesota and Wisconsin, the last couple summers, people have been finding emaciated grouse as well, and they suspect West Nile. The thing about West Nile is, it occurs in bird populations, and there will be some that resist it and survive it, and the population comes back stronger if it has habitat to sustain it. In Pennsylvania, what the researchers are finding is that in areas where the habitat is marginal, West Nile is very, very hard on the grouse, and they don't come back. And in areas where they have good habitat, have a mix of forest age classes, the grouse can recover.
Let's talk about how we turn this around. This is going to sound strange. I mean, because clearly we need to establish some young forests and some young seedlings, some young, feed and forage for these birds and cover. In the West, we have a lot of wildfires, and wildfires promote secondary growth. You think that would be a boom for grouse? Is that something, prescribed burns that's being considered in the Midwest and back east?
Yes, although prescribed burns in the East and the Midwest, where there are a lot more people, it's difficult to, fire can't go everywhere you need it to go.
This is true.
Keep people safe. And tornadoes and straight-line winds historically created a lot of grouse cover too, but we can't aim a tornado. We have, our forests are fragmented here, and you can't make a tornado land where it's going to do the most good. And another concern there too, with the forests being fragmented, is you can have great grouse habitat in a small area, and you can raise grouse, but then when those birds disperse, as they do in the early fall, and they wind up out in a cornfield somewhere, they won't survive, and then you're just creating grouse to kill them.
Okay, so here's another one, and I hate this because I hate the look of it, but it certainly promotes young growth, clear-cutting certain areas of forests.
Clear-cutting is really the answer. It's the only way we can mimic the effects of a fire or the effects of a tornado touching down in the woods. And when people think clear-cuts, they think of these vast clear-cuts, and we're not talking about that. It's clear-cuts of 5 and 10 acres. The goal is to create a forest of mixed age classes, because there are species that depend on every one of them, and many species depend on different age forests at different times of the year. So really, for healthy wildlife, what you need is trees of all ages. Say every 5 or 10 years you want to cut a small area and then make a kind of a patchwork. It's much smaller, of course, than prehistorically those areas would have been much larger, but we have to work with what we have today.
This is absolutely fascinating. I mean, if nothing else, it's teaching me that when it comes to forest management and game management, one size certainly doesn't fit all, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's really a balancing act among different species, and it's not just grouse that are in trouble. There are a lot of birds, nighthawks, golden-winged warblers, a whole lot of different songbirds that migrate down to the tropics and come back, and some are here that depend on that young forest. And without it, not just the grouse that are in trouble. And from a hunter's perspective, young growth is good for deer and turkeys too. I always thought that once the deer and turkey hunters figured that out, people who own their own places, they'd start cutting trees, and grouse would recover because of it. But it really hasn't happened yet. It's really hard to convince somebody who owns, say, 40 acres that what they need to do is cut down 10 acres of their trees.
This is true.
Nobody wants to do that, and I can sympathize. But in a way, that's the answer.
Wow. I'll tell you what, Phil, absolutely fascinating stuff here. And folks, if you want to find out more, read Phil Bourjaily's article, Tough Times. Again, it's in the latest edition of Field and Stream magazine. You'll find it on newsstands all over the place. You can always subscribe as well. And last thing before we go, if folks, want to advocate for ruffed grouse, there are some organizations that do that.
Yes, the Ruffed Grouse Society is the main one. They are the biggest advocate for young forest wildlife in the country. They do a great job. They've partnered in Minnesota. They've partnered with the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association. They also work to promote sustainable grouse habitat. American Bird Congress, Cornell's Ornithology Lab, the Nature Conservancy are all groups that are beginning to realize and promote the value of young forests for wildlife. So there are more and more groups out there, and there's also a lot of opposition to cutting trees.
Well, the bottom line is this. Like I said a few minutes ago, one size doesn't fit all, but some good groups to look into if you want to go ahead and join the fight and advocate for the ruffed grouse, the common man's bird that, as you just heard, isn't so common in some of our United States anymore. Phil, thanks for bringing this to our attention both in print and today on the radio on America Outdoors Radio.
Thank you for giving me the chance. I really appreciate it.
Looking to reel in the marketing opportunity of a lifetime? Then set the hook, because we've got it right here. America Outdoors Radio has sponsorships available, and we offer an affordable platform to reach thousands of listeners interested in fishing, hunting, and the outdoors. Find out more by contacting host John Cruz through his website at AmericanOutdoorsRadio.com. That's AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com. But hurry, if you wait too long, this big opportunity might just get away. That's AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com.
Here's some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for health insurance, or more importantly, if you sign up for a plan that you're just not happy with, you still have a choice. It's called MediShare, and MediShare is a Christian healthcare sharing program. It's been around for 25 years. They have more than 400,000 members now around the country. And get this, over the years, MediShare members have shared more than $2 billion of each other's medical bills, so they could help share your needs too. And best of all, you could save a lot of money with MediShare. The typical savings for a family is around $500 a month. Your savings could be more or less, but think about what you could do with that extra money every month. So if you think you're stuck with a high-cost health plan that doesn't have much to offer, think again. You can join MediShare anytime, so call them today and check it out. There's no pressure. They're super easy to talk to. 855-90-BIBLE. That's 855-90-BIBLE. 855-90-BIBLE.
Well, it's time to check in with Captain Mac McQuarrie. He is the owner of Sportsman's Cove Lodge. They sponsor our show, and they operate Alaska's best lodge. And I mean that. In fact, it's such a great lodge. They've even named the website after that, alaskasbestlodge.com. Captain Mac, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Hey, John. Good to be with you.
So, Mac, I know you're very busy getting ready to open up the lodge for the season, and I know that Alaska Fish and Game has set the seasons for the year. What are the catch limits for 2019?
Yeah, John, we're going crazy right now getting the lodge ready. It's a really, really busy time for us. As far as the regs for this year coming up, it's pretty much the same as last year. You'll hear a lot about closures, total closures for king salmon and that kind of stuff in certain areas of southeast Alaska. None of that affects us. None of that is in the areas where we fish. They're quite a ways away from us. None of the king salmon really heavy-duty regulations are going to affect us, and it's going to be the same as it was last year. 1 king a day and 1 king annual limit. Coho are looking good. Standard limits for coho, 6 fish per person, no annual limits. And so we're expecting some wide open coho fishing this year, silver fishing. Pink salmon are down a little bit this year. That's going to affect the net fisheries more than it affects us, but we love those pinks because they smoke up great, and they're fun to catch when you get into a bunch of pinks and you're just throwing them over both shoulders. And there's a huge forecast for hatchery chum salmon. We get into those. Those are mostly for net fisheries again, but we get into them. And they're big and fat and sassy. And you know, the chum salmon, they get a bad rap because when they get into the streams and when they're in the close to the streams, they turn into, we call them uniroyals. They turn those just awful colors. But where we get them, still out in the bright, out in the ocean, they are gorgeous fish. In fact, they're some of the most beautiful fish of the salmon when they're bright and iridescent. They're just an incredible fish, and they're big. You know, they're the next biggest fish to the kings, and they fight like crazy, and they're a great fish. And it's a shame that they get such a bad rap. But anyway, there's supposed to be tons of those this year. Huge hatchery outputs, and again, they do that for the net fisheries, but we get the side benefits from them. So that's kind of it in a nutshell for salmon. same regs for lingcod, one a day, one annual. Although if you get a bigger one, a 55-inch, over 55 inches, you can keep that one, and it gives you an extra bonus fish for your annual as well.
Oh.
Yeah, and we had a lot of lingcod last year. It surprised us, actually. We had an awesome lingcod last year, and we were grateful for it because some of the other fisheries weren't as good last year. Our weather was awesome last year. That was the bonus. But anyway, so let's see what else. Non-pelagics and pelagics are the same. Rockfish are the same.
And of course, halibut. That's a big, important fish.
Yeah. Big, yeah. Our number one and number two fish, depending on how you look at it, depending on what your preference is. And that's going to be the same as last year. Pretty much it's an inch different in the lower level. But basically you can keep anything up to about 40 pounds and then anything over 200 pounds roughly. That's what it translates to. So the good eating ones, and anything much over 40 pounds and up to about 200 pounds we cannot keep. That's the way the regs are shaping up. Pretty much the same as last year.
Okay. Well, let's turn to what's new at the lodge. I know you've got a few things cooking when it comes to that.
Oh, man, we're up to our ears in stuff right now. One of the exciting things for us is that we're converting the gift shop, which used to be called the Otter Shop. We're converting that to the Sultry Pub, and we're all excited about it. It's going to be a really right-on-the-water pub with atmosphere and a great gathering place. And it'll double as a conference room, too, for businesses having small conferences and that kind of stuff. So we've never had a conference room, a dedicated conference room before. So this will be a multi-purpose pub, conference room, gathering place, watering hole, and right on prime property, right at the very water's edge. It's going to be cool.
Well, you had me at the word pub, so that excites me right there. And I understand you're starting something new, the Alaska Wilderness Experience. It sounds like a reality TV show. Did somebody from Hollywood get your ear, or what's going on here?
It does, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, we have a wonderful neighbor, just moved into the Cove, and he has a absolutely gorgeous, authentic log home. I mean, a really authentic log home, built of real logs, none of that phony stuff. And it's a gorgeous home. It was a year-round residence, so we're teaming up with him to provide what we're calling the Alaska Log Home Wilderness Experience. Long handle, and we might modify that a little bit, but it's oriented more towards families. And it's a week-long experience. It's not necessarily focused on fishing. It's whale watching, sea lion watching, totem poles. We have a native village right close to us with some beautiful totems. Bear watching, salmon spawning streams. There will be some fishing in it, but the family will be able to tailor it to the activities from a menu of activities we'll have. And we're pretty excited about it, and it's been well received. We've already sold our first package for this year, and it's just something new for us, but it doesn't focus so much on the fishing. It's more, we're surrounded by all of these really cool activities, and we don't necessarily take advantage of it because for 30 years we've concentrated on fishing.
Sure. And
we get these requests, but it's hard to accommodate them when the rest of the folks on the boat are here to go fishing, right?
Right.
And, so we're excited about it. It's going to be pretty neat and family oriented, and it's set up for a family group of 6 or thereabouts, and it's pretty neat. They'll have the whole log home by themselves, and everything will operate out of the log home.
Are you dedicating one of your fishing boats to this family that's taking part in this experience? Because I love your boats.
Yes, and it's my personal boat, or was my personal boat for a lot of years. I just sold it last year, but we've leased it back for these packages, and it's a 37-footer like ours. It was my personal boat, so it's been gussied up a little bit, but it's a no-nonsense fishing machine with a few more amenities in it, and I will be the captain. So it's something that I'm taking personal interest in, and getting it off the ground and getting it going. And I'm excited about it as anybody because I've for years wanted to take advantage of all of the cool stuff we've got around us. That's Alaska, right? It's what people really visualize as Alaska.
Well, Mac, we are out of time, but I've got one last question for you. Do you have openings left this summer for the Alaska Wilderness Experience? And do you have any openings, maybe because of cancellations, for fishing this summer?
We do. We have a few. This was a fantastic booking year. We were almost sold out by the end of October.
Wow.
Last year, yeah. And then, of course, people at this time of the year, people all of a sudden, they get sick or whatever,
Sure.
and their plans change and that kind of stuff. So we do have some. We just had a sad couple of cancellations 2 weeks ago. Two of our longtime group leaders, they're elderly, and they passed away, and their group fell apart. And so we've got those ones. That was 12 people, 2 groups of 6. So they're in the prime time. We also have some at the beginning and the end of the season. But give Denise a call at the toll-free number 800-962-7889 or on the web, and she'll tune you up on what's going on. There's some special prices because we've got to move those trips before the season starts. So some good deals there right now.
Okay. Well, if you want to go to Alaska's Best Lodge, go to the website for Sportsman's Cove Lodge, and that is alaskasbestlodge.com. That's alaskasbestlodge.com. Take advantage of one of these discounted last-minute openings for this summer in Southeast Alaska, fishing off of Prince of Wales Island, or book one of these brand new Alaska Wilderness Experiences and have a great time seeing the area with Captain Mac. Mac, always a pleasure. Looking forward to seeing you in a couple months up near Ketchikan on Prince of Wales Island.
You bet. We'll have her all cranked up ready for you, John, and everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you. Why book at Sportsman's Cove Lodge?
Why is Alaska like no other place on Earth? It hasn't changed in thousands of years.
From the way you get here on a float plane to the way you go out with the guides and the boats, it's just a professional experience.
And I said, this is as good as it gets. I said, if you can't catch fish here, you can't catch fish anywhere.
Your experience with us will leave you speechless.
Book now at alaskasbestlodge.com.
There's a place where the fishing is year-round, where the sun shines 300 days a year. The wineries and breweries are right downtown. The hiking and cycling offer spectacular views you just don't get in the big cities. Fortunately, the place is real and vibrant. It's the Dalles, Oregon, just 90 short minutes from Portland, along the gorgeous Columbia River, where the adventures are limited only by your imagination. Find out more at explorethedalles.com.
Are you looking to reel in the marketing opportunity of a lifetime? Then set the hook, because we've got it right here for you. America Outdoors Radio has sponsorships available, and we offer affordable platforms to reach thousands of listeners interested in fishing, hunting, and the outdoors. Find out more by contacting John Cruz through his website at AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com. That's AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com. Hurry, though. If you wait too long, the big opportunity might just get away. AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com.
There's no more majestic, magical, adventuresome country than the western United States of America to enjoy a great family vacation. Hello, I'm Mark Hemstreet, owner of Shiloh Inns. Shiloh Inns are still offering affordable 4-star accommodations at 2-star prices. Enjoy deluxe smoke-free suites, spacious pools and spas, and fully equipped fitness centers. From free high-speed internet in every room to a free continental breakfast or full, hot, delicious breakfast at most Shiloh Inns. There are no hidden fees like some of the big chain hotels charge. Even the kids stay free, and Shiloh Inns are dog-friendly. For reservations, call 1-800-222-2244 or visit our website at shilohinns.com. Shiloh Inns, affordable excellence. American family-owned and proud of it.
Backcountry Hunters and Anglers seeks to ensure North America's outdoor heritage of hunting and fishing through education and work on behalf of wild public lands and waters. Lend your voice to the fight by visiting www.backcountryhunters.org and join the 25,000 men and women who have pledged to defend wildlife and public access. You can also demonstrate your support by signing up for the 2019 North American Rendezvous in Boise, Idaho, May 1st to the 5th.
You're back in with America Outdoors Radio. I'm John Cruz, and we've got some outdoors news for you. From Target Walleye and the Grand Forks Herald, we can report a new record walleye has been caught in North Dakota. The current state record walleye of 15 pounds, 13 ounces, was caught last May by Neil Lair on the Missouri River near Fox Island, and that broke a record, which had stood for nearly 60 years. But just 1 year later, 41-year-old Tom Volk from Lincoln, North Dakota, has blown that new record away. He did it catching a 16-pound, 9-ounce, 32.5-inch freak fish, and he caught it fishing from shore on the Hart River in Mandan. The lure he used was a white Northland tackle jig and a beef fishing tackle, Authentics Moxie plastic. Asked whether he thought his record would hold up over time, Volk told the Grand Forks Herald it might not last this year. There are so many big fish in the system right now, so many guys are catching nice fish, I wouldn't doubt if somebody breaks it fairly quickly. But I'm just enjoying the moment right now. For what it's worth, Tom, we're enjoying the moment with you. Congratulations on this new state record walleye for North Dakota. You've earned some serious bragging rights with this catch. Frank Sargent with the Fishing Wire has got a good news report for you today out of Florida, where the red tide that has plagued southwest Florida's Gulf Coast for nearly 2 years appears to be completely gone, with no reports of fish kills, respiratory irritation, or even discolored water found anywhere in the last month by Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission researchers. The amazing thing, according to Sargent, is that despite many reported fish kills, spring fishing for most species appears to be as good as ever, and in some cases, even better. Guides report a great spring of saltwater fishing, especially for Spanish mackerel, with some up to 3 feet long, as well as plenty of 20-pound kingfish. Here's hoping happy days are here again in this part of Florida, and here's hoping that receding red tide stays away for a long while. And from the Shooting Wire, we've got good news for Arkansas. CZ, the makers of some very fine firearms out of Czechoslovakia, to include a CZ-75 pistol that I own, are moving their U.S. production and headquarters facilities to Little Rock. From an economic point of view, this is a big deal. The two-phase plan will invest more than $90 million into the facilities and ultimately create some 565 jobs over a 6-year period. Construction will begin immediately with initial startup plan for March 2020. You can contact CZ USA and start filling out your job applications now if you're interested. And now, as promised, Denis Peirce, the owner of TrollingFlies.com and the longtime host of the KNCO Fishing and Outdoor Report, heard every week on KNCO News Talk 830 out of Grass Valley, California, is back with us again to talk about catching fish by trolling flies. Denis, thanks for sticking around.
John, my pleasure.
So, Denis, we started off talking about how effective it is to troll a fly and different ways to do it. What I'd like to do now is talk about some of the places where you've had great success doing just that. And I thought we would start in your home state of California, maybe Nevada as well. What are some of the lakes where you like to troll flies, and how do you go about catching trout and kokanee when you do it?
My favorite lake in Northern California is Lake Almanor. It's about 4,000-foot elevation, and it's above Chico, California. It's in the foothills. It's in the Sierras, at the very north end of the Sierras, but it is a large lake. It's a flooded meadow with a dam at the outlet of the meadow. That's a big lake that has an incredible food chain that produces fish like crazy. And it's probably the best fly trolling lake, if not maybe the best trolling lake in California, and has been for a number of years. But that, and then Pyramid Lake in Nevada. I've done well over there. They have the Lahontan cutthroat trout over there, and they're big minnow eaters. They have really big trout over there. But Lake Shasta, just about anywhere, but I tend to think of it more in a seasonal time frame. And I tend to look at fly trolling, particularly shallow fly trolling, as a cool weather month type of an endeavor. in the hot weather months, particularly July, August, early September, the lakes get really warm, and the trout get concentrated on those few spots where there is cold water, which is incoming streams, springs, or the thermocline. The other two-thirds of the year are what I call the cold weather months, and hot water concentrates fish, cold water scatters the fish. And once they're scattered, particularly with a fly rod, you can't cover enough water to find them, and trolling is it. And that's why I'm primarily into fly trolling in the, let's say, late September through May, early June, for trout fishing in lakes when they're not necessarily down at the thermocline, but they're up near the top. But those are sort of my observations on it.
When it comes to trolling for rainbow trout with your flies in those Northern California lakes, we'll say September, October timeframe, what's your go-to fly and why?
My favorite color is orange, and it's an anomaly. I don't quite understand it. My best guess is that it has contrast underwater. I've done a lot of video shooting of it, or I always end up with a fly spread. I have 2-rod stamp. I have other people in the boat. We're always running 3, 4, 5 lines out there, and I always have orange on. And then you start changing colors, and orange is the last color that I'll change.
Very interesting. Now, let's talk about Pyramid Lake, and you're absolutely right. That is definitely a colder water fishery. When it comes to fall fishing or even early spring fishing, what kind of flies are you trolling there? I'm guessing they're not orange.
No. Bigger is better over at Pyramid. I mean, Pyramid now has got those pilot peak fish that are back running up into the 25-pound plus range over there. And they're eating tui chub is the primary bait fish over there, which is sort of an olive to olive gray over white with hints of red to it as flash to them. But so an olive over white is a real good one that I use over there. But the traditional fly fisherman casting from shore at Pyramid Lake for the last 50 years, black with a red tail or black with red highlights has been the number one fly. And so I do big tandem flies which is basically 2 flies hooked together with stainless steel wire in a tui chub pattern or in a black with a red highlights.
One last thing I've got to ask you about. I understand that you troll flies for salmon and other species as well up in Puget Sound in Washington State.
Washington, all the way up through British Columbia and southeast Alaska, it's the protected waters up there to where a lot of people get out, and they've been trolling flies and casting flies up there since at least the 1950s, if not before. And particularly the silver salmon, when they come in September, they're really aggressive fish, and they like gaudy colored flies for whatever reason. And they get real aggressive about it, and it's great fun. And you can actually troll them up with a fly rod.
There you go. And pink's always a good color, I know that. And this is a pink year, though it's going to be a down year, unfortunately, in the Pacific Northwest for those pink salmon. But it just goes to show, trolling flies works for all sorts of different applications. We didn't even hit some of the other ones I wanted to talk about. I know you catch stripers. I know you catch Mackinaw, but we'll have to leave that for another time and just direct people to your website at trollingflies.com for more information. The website again, folks, trollingflies.com. Denis Peirce is really one of the pioneers when it comes to trolling flies as a method of catching fish. Check out what he's doing. Buy some of his flies. Give it a try yourself. I think you're going to like this style of fishing. Denis, thanks for joining us today on America Outdoors Radio.
John, thanks for having me.
After you buy some flies off of Denis Peirce's site, I hope you'll check out our website at America Outdoors Radio and like and follow our America Outdoors Radio Facebook page as well. If you find yourself online Saturday morning at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, tune into our show on talkamericaradio.us. It is the new conservative voice for talk radio that you hear all over the internet, and we're part of their lineup at that time. You can also hear our show on demand, albeit a few days later on several platforms. We've got a new one, Radio Public, and we continue to air on Podbean, Stitcher, and YouTube. Just look for America Outdoors Radio. As April fades and May begins, there's more and more opportunities for fishing and hunting and hiking fun out there. And I hope you'll not only get to enjoy all that, but maybe break out the tent and do a little camping too. Here's hoping the good Lord blesses you in the days ahead, and here's hoping you get outside for some fun. After all, it is your country and you're outdoors, so get out there and enjoy it.
Natural wonders, beaches, and coves, majestic forests, and scenic vistas are waiting for you at the Tillamook Coast. Lace up your hiking boots, grab your camera, and come to Northwest Oregon. Find out more at tillamookcoast.com.